Morning, everyone. We are here for another episode of The Overcomers. We are coming live, and our guest, Amy, is joining us. She's already here. I wanted to do a quick introduction for Amy. She's an amazing lady that has gone through a lot of adversity from losing her brother at a very early age and going through just so many challenges and trials from life. It's best if you hear it straight from her, though. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Amy Hesper. Hello,
Hey,
Amy.
Bilko. Hey, how are you?
So, I'm doing really well. To get to the point, I didn't do a very good job introducing you. So, if you could be so kind, please share with us a little bit about yourself, starting with what is your place of birth, where did you grow up? Share with us a little bit about your parents, and we also have a tradition to share about the grandparents. So if you could be so kind, start with your mom and dad, the place of birth, and what about their mom and dad as well, so we can follow your heritage.
Okay. So I am Amy Hesper, born and raised in Mississippi. My family, of course, born and raised in Mississippi, between Mississippi and New Orleans, Louisiana. And my heritage, of course, we have a little bit of Italian and German and Cherokee Indian in our lineage, which I think is really amazing. And we traced after my grandmother passed away, we actually found a little bit of genealogy. And so we actually have ancestors that go back, of course, to the 1800s from France, which we thought was really amazing. And we had never knew that until we found that, and my grandmother, she had it tucked away in her hope chest. But my grandmother, of course, was a very big part of my life early on, and she was a second mother to me. And
Mhm.
so my parents, of course, Mississippi, lived in Louisiana a little bit, lived out in El Paso for a while. And so I think a lot of that has just lent to shape me to who I am today. And of course, like I said, born and raised in Mississippi. I do work full time, and then I chase my dreams on the side, being a devotional writer for Christian devotionals, and then I am also a inspirational fluid artist as well.
I really want to hear your story. We've met in Texas a few years back, and I can tell you have such a tender soul, and you're a very, very strong person and a strong believer. And I know that today we're going to be able to heal our own traumas through listening to your story and hearing your path with, overcoming all of these challenges and adversities. So in general, just so we can open up, what are, before we start chronologically, what are the top three adversities that you faced in your life so far?
The top three adversities, would have to say, of course, bullying in school, mental and physical abuse at home, and then loss would be the three top adversities that I've experienced in my lifetime.
Let's start with home. Tell me a little bit about what was the first conscious moment when you realized you are Amy, you are alive. What is the first core memory you remember of being alive?
Oh my gosh. That's a deep question. I've never been asked that before.
I know most of the questions I'm going to ask you today have never been asked before.
And that's what makes you so amazing, Belko. Let's see. I would have to say some of my first core memories was when my mom and uh, dad were, of course, still married before they divorced. And I remember growing up. surrounded my grandmother and a grandfather and living on the property and being able to experience a little bit of the farm life back then. Of course, I was born late 70s, so things were a lot different back then. The way people lived were a lot different. And I just remember being around the animals. My grandfather had cows, there were ducks, and I remember there's a picture that just kind of comes to my mind, and it was me as a small girl holding a duck. And I can remember my dad telling me the story that he watched me chase this little duck around the yard until I caught it. And I was sitting in my rocking chair and I was just kind of holding the duck and just rocking me and the duck together. And so I think that's probably where a little bit of my compassion for animals come from, just being surrounded by that at an early age.
Would you say that's age 3 or 4, something like that?
I would say that was probably 3 to 4 years old. Yeah.
Before. And your parents separated at what age were you when they split up?
They split when I was in first grade.
7. So
Mhm.
they probably had some issues before they split up, which led to the separation.
Yes, they did. So, I can recall, the arguments, overhearing them argue within first grade. And, it's just kind of pieces and parts. I think uh, as a young child, we tend to block out things in our mind. We may remember bits and pieces, but for the most part, the hurts and the traumas we do tend to block out. But I do remember, a lot of fighting and just things not being good between both of them.
Were they struggling with any abuse of alcohol or substance, or do you think that those disagreements came from previous generation, from grandparents maybe?
I would have to say it's probably, they had the tools at that time that they had because it was passed down from generation to generation. And of course, mental health back then was not really a topic of discussion like it is today. And, one of the things that I've learned throughout the years, and even most recently, is our parents know what our parents know. And it's from how they were treated, how they were brought up, what their parents knew from what their parents knew. And so I think it was just, two people that originally started out and loved each other, and, various pieces of life and emotion got in the way of them. And I think they just kind of grew apart. They were very deep seated in church early on, and then they kind of grew out of that. And I think part of the separation potentially came from from that experience. But I think a lot of it was just two people who had grew apart from life circumstances.
Yeah. And when they separated, who did you end up staying with, mom or dad, or both?
So my mom is who I lived with after that. And so lived with her for a while, and then she ended up meeting someone else and remarried. And so my stepdad was a very stern man, and I would say from the time they married until the time I moved out, our relationship was not that great, just because of how stern he was. And of course, alcohol played
Hmm.
a big part for him, and then my mom as well. And so it was growing up and him getting upset or mad if I did something, or him saying, oh well, you didn't think, why did you do this? And then, of course, the physical aspect. If you upset him, and then you're getting a whipping, is or beating at sometimes. But so really kind of picked up the trait to shrink back and not put myself out there that much, just to avoid triggering something within him to upset him, or get him angry or mad or anything like that.
Usually when parents separate, they obviously don't like the first choice of their partner, and a lot of parents try to get into a relationship fast,
Hmm.
and they would try to fill a hole that's missing, and then they would put the other new parent in a position where they have to now be a replacement, and they have to now take fill that hole. And a lot of the new parents try too hard sometimes, and don't have the best approach or not as patient, and it's so hard, especially if you don't have the tools or the education to communicate and be emotionally available to a young girl, 7-year-old girl. And a lot of people fight their kids, they beat them. The Bible is teaching, don't spare the rod, and they go by that. My wife and I have different opinion on that. We are believers, but we don't believe in physical abuse. We want to be parents similar to the way God is parenting, by giving us the education and allowing us to make the choice, obviously age appropriate. But we don't think physical abuse would streamline any results. I think that it's a shortcut for the parent, for the lack of other tools to get the child to obey, but it's not a natural and true understanding. So the child doesn't know why they're obedient. It's mostly fear, and we don't want our children to be afraid of us. So that's why we don't fully agree with those verses and those parts of the Bible that says, don't spare the rod, and all those things. So what's your opinion? Because you say that you're doing a lot of devotional, and was it just physical abuse or also sexual abuse, or what did the abuse look like? And what's your opinion as a Christian on using the rod for discipline, punishment, physical punishment for discipline?
Yeah. So, of course, there are times, I believe, when the parent does need to be the parent, and discipline a child if the child is just being disrespectful, or not listening, and just doing things that they know they shouldn't, after the parent told them no, or don't do that, or gave them instruction. That And I think part of that is just from growing up, but also from the standpoint of parents do need to be parents and have that level of authority over their children, instead of putting themselves on the same level of just being their child's best friend. Because I believe that it does set that child up for one, later in life, respecting authority. And I think today we don't see that quite as much as we used to. So it wasn't any sexual abuse. The mental piece of it was more from the tools that my stepdad had, knowing how now, understanding how he was raised and things being different back then, for him to say, what were you thinking when you did this, instead of saying, hey, that wasn't, you could have done that a little bit differently here. Let's work to for me to help you understand what I'm talking about, instead of just like talking down, it being more negative, and just making you feel like you're stupid. Because that's a lot of what it was for me. It's like, oh, well, I can never do anything right, because when I do it, it's not right. It's never good enough for him. You know, he doesn't see where at least I put forth the effort to do
Hmm.
it. And again, coming up alongside of me and saying, hey, thank you for doing what I asked you to do. However, here's a way that we could have done it a little bit differently. And again, that just goes to a parent not really having that tool in their toolkit because he wasn't aware. That's just how he was raised. That's likely how he was talked to. And so, of course, that's how he talked to me because he didn't know any different. But as a young child, when you continually hear, you don't think, you didn't do that right, it's not done right, or you're not doing it how I want to do, it does leave you thinking you can never do anything right. You're stupid. You don't know what you're doing. You'll never make it in life because you're not doing everything that they want you to do.
Well, I understand that obviously the mental abuse has caused you more damage based on your answer. And you said that, it's not good to be in the extreme of being a friend with your child, which I agree with you. It's a terrible, terrible strategy. And it's good to have authority over the child, but where are you at specifically on physical approach? Like, do you support parents physically hurting their children to demonstrate authority, or where are you at on that? What is the sweet spot, you think? Do you think that kids should be spanked or not?
So with that, I think, if a child, if your child does not do what you tell them to, or they just keep on and keep on, and that they are just pushing your buttons, a pop on the hand, a pop on the butt, like with your hand, or of course, growing up, my grandmother, she would tell you to go get a switch off of a tree. Some of my family, they had like
That
an
makes it so
actual
much
wood
worse.
yeah, like a
Pick
wood
your weapon.
paddle. Yeah. And I used to always choose the smallest limb off of a branch, thinking that it would hurt less, but it actually hurt more. But I
She
think
knows.
it's just, yeah, I think it's just like a one or two, pop just to say, hey, you're not doing what I tell you to, instead of like a physical, like just whip you for minutes upon minutes upon minutes. And
So you think
when I,
mod- in moderation is okay?
yes.
So when does moderation become excessive? What makes the line? What makes it crossing the line? Because if you agree with physical punishment, then we can't really call it abuse. If you think that it's fair, then it's not really abusive. When does it become an abuse? When is the line being crossed?
I think the line becomes crossed when it's just an immediate, like like for instance, if you didn't do something fast enough, if they said, hey, I need you to do this, and then, you don't do it right then and there, and then they just, jerk you up and start like just whipping you uncontrollably. Or, like I said, if it goes on longer than like, a quick just pat on the butt, or, a slap on the hand, one or two times just to establish that authority, no, that's not abuse. But if it's like, they're holding you by one arm and they're just, waylaying into you, and it goes on for, longer than one or two hits, then yes, I think that is excessive.
Okay, because it's hard for people to manage that line, to understand. All right, I'm not being abusive now. Like for example, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I've never spanked her. Like I don't think I'm able to. Even when she deserved it. And my father never hit me, but he definitely criticized me for a large portion of my life. So I've experienced that mental criticism where you could never do any good when you kind of lose hope in yourself, and you build a self-image that's not very powerful, low self-esteem because of the beliefs that you adopt from your heroes, from the people that you mimicking. And but I do remember my mom hitting me once, and that's such a clear memory, like it was yesterday. And I was like 4 or 5 years old. So I know that those are core memories for children, and I know that you still remember some of the beat downs. And I can tell you that even if it doesn't happen often to that extent, even if it's just one punch, one hit, one slap, children still remember those moments because
Hmm.
it's the person that it's supposed to protect you, provide for you, support you, love you, is now in a war with you, in a sense. So depending on the age, that could be a very scary moment, because now
Hmm.
you're really alone, fighting a war against somebody who's physically stronger than you, and there's no one else. You could some kids go to their grandparents and share the fear with them, but sometimes there's no one else. So submitting to that physical punishment is a form of identity crisis at a very early age. Like, who am I? Why am I so bad? And it leads to, I think it leads to orphan mindset. So who are my actual parents? What do I need to do so I can stop getting beat up? What do I need to do so I could be good in their mind? I tried everything. I'm not good. And this is so difficult, being able to manage when do you cross the line. Sometimes it could be one punch, but you can knock people out with one punch. uh
Yeah.
when does it become an abuse? And I don't think there's any clear definition of that. And I think with the years, this was way more welcome when you were growing up than today. Today is more of a difficult
Hmm.
topic. Back then,
Yeah.
parents were sharing at church how they whipped their kid, and it wasn't anything to be worried about. It's not like child services is going to knock on your door, but
Yeah.
now it's very possible that they will. Like, if
Hmm.
I saw a parent, a father beating his daughter, and his daughter was so beautiful and so gentle and so tiny, and he was beating her with closed fist at the airport. And I
Yeah.
broke that fight. I stopped. I said, dude,
Hmm.
I will punch you if you don't stop beating your kid. And he got
Yeah.
offended. My kid, I'm gonna do whatever I want with my kid. Well, you're not gonna do it on my watch. So it was it's disturbing sometimes, and who knows what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So how do parents justify? And it seems like what you're saying is, when they go past that point where it's not necessary anymore, when they made their point across and they keep going, maybe that's more of an anger problem with
Hmm.
the person. So
Right. Yeah.
when is person healthy for the child?
Hmm.
Is there a definition of how much, how often, at what occasions do you spank? And I mean, imagine if God does the same thing, because as adults we're not obedient most of the time. We're
Hmm.
we're constantly disobedient. If God just gives us a little beat down here and there, appropriately, little punch in the gut here and there, if we're not obedient several times a day, and if he's using the same approach as parenting, the ultimate father, then we wouldn't like it at all as adults, because there's always someone physically stronger who could be authority over you. So we do that for our children. And I've met those people who say, hey, because I was spanked as a kid, now I learned to respect authority, and I learned to respect others, and I learned to do that. So a lot of people will pull positive things out of spanking. It's not always negative, but I just don't
Hmm.
know what is the golden perfect sweet spot.
Yeah.
Is that
Um,
way you define it?
well, again, and you mentioned something. A parent should never like ball up a fist. I mean, that using fist or punching, that no, I would say that is definitely excessive and abuse at that standpoint. Again, I think it's just for me, it's like I said, a pop on the hand. Hey, this is what I need you to do, or you keep doing this, and that's not right. if they're being mean, or, if the child is doing something that clearly they should not be doing, pop on the hand, pop on the butt, just to get their attention. But again, if it goes more, and when I say a pop, I'm talking like, you know, a pop
something
on the
that's
butt.
not something that's not causing pain or scar, or something that just,
Right.
hey, I'm the parent here, I can go further than that, I choose not to, but don't
Yeah.
forget that this, all right, I like that, that's
Yeah.
good, you know.
Now, my real dad, one thing that he would do, because I don't remember him ever whipping me. He had a rule. He would count, and if he got to three, and I was
Mm,
still doing whatever it was that he told me not to do, he would say one, and if I kept pushing it and I got to two, and it's like he'd say, "Okay, you've got one more number to go." And if he got to that number, then at that point, he would assert that, parental authority. But I don't ever remember my real
yeah,
dad, whipping me as a kid. But I think it was that one, two, three, and when he got to two, he'd give you that warning. Hey, you're
that's the
pushing
exact
it.
the exact approach I used with my daughter growing up.
Mm,
And they taught her that at preschool, which I'll be forever grateful. It wasn't my idea, but the teacher at preschool told me, "Hey, we have this 1, 2, 3 rule. You can feel free to use it at home," and it's been amazing. I mean, sometimes I gotta go 2.5, 2.75, 2.9, you know, but it does work. So let's go back to the doubt, the criticism, the mental abuse, because in my opinion they're both equally strong, and sometimes the mental abuse could be even stronger because
mhm.
the physical scars go away, we grow up and it's not a big deal, but some of those words become our belief systems, and now everything that we learn about life, everything that we face in life is filtered through that belief system of who we are, and we qualify or disqualify ourselves based on that belief system. So what are some of the things that you were told as a child that you would never be able to do or become, and you have already proven them wrong?
So of course, like I said, my stepdad, he would always say, what are you thinking? You didn't do that right. You didn't think before you did that. But also it was the bullying from school. So it was, getting the negative criticism from home, but also getting the bullying from school that was, they were making fun of me, about my appearance. And so coupled with both fronts, it really did a number on self-confidence and self-esteem. And from from all of that, the bullying at school, it left me with no self-esteem, no self-confidence, and loathed my appearance in the mirror because they would make fun of, being a late bloomer as a female, my ears, my nose, my last name, started hating everything. And coupled with the you don't think from home, you'll never do anything right. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a helpless, pathetic, ugly girl, and I hated that reflection in the mirror. And so all of that left up into maybe 10 years ago. I started thinking a little bit differently about my looks, but honestly, I would have to say probably 4 or 5 years ago is when I was able to move past that hatred of the reflection in the mirror from everything. But all of that compounded daily because it was from both fronts, and not really feeling like I was ever supported. or loved, how I needed to be loved back then. And it lasted for so long.
Yeah.
Just all of those feelings, just negative feelings. And I eventually became the bully from just the negative mindset, a victim, of course, mentality, because I never felt I could do anything right. It always felt like, everybody was beating up on me just from all of those experiences.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you really had to go through this, and I can definitely relate to some of the things that you've went through. It becomes dangerous when the accusations and the criticism gets justified from a third party, from people at school. Then it becomes reality for us, even though it's not real.
Mhm.
And that's the essence and the foundation of shame. Shame is not like guilt. Guilt is something that we do consciously, and then we have regrets afterwards. But shame, many times, not many times, all the time, shame is something we've never done. Shame is something that we're not faulty of, but someone else told us the lie, and we give shame the same importance and the same attention as guilt, as it is something that we've done. So you have beautiful nose and beautiful ears, and you're a beautiful human, and you were lied to that you don't, and you believe the lie, which is the
Mm.
essence of shame. And sometimes shame is harder to get rid of than guilt. But what I know for a fact is that putting light on shame is the main access and the main opportunity to heal from it. So first of all, thank you for your bravery today to share this emotional moments and difficult moments of your life, because you are helping many viewers right now dealing with shame by bringing up your story and making your story known. And we're very interested in finding out about the transformation and how you turn things around. But before we go there, let's stay a little bit longer on those struggles and those challenges and those adversities. What were some of the worst things during the bullying process? Were you physically hurt, or it was mostly verbal abuse?
It was the mental abuse, just the name calling, just being picked on, and of course, kids are kids, and kids make jokes, and it's funny to them, and they don't think anything about it, but it really does leave the person who is being called the names, and you know, they thought it was funny to relate my last name, Arnold at the time, that's my maiden name, with an armadillo. And I mean, you can see those things, and they've got this hard shell, and they just look ugly at first glance. And that's what I would see every time that I looked in the mirror. And so, it was funny to them, but it wasn't to me. And so that really left a lot of mental scars for me, and just the loathing, that reflection in the mirror. I never thought that I was beautiful growing up, through those years. And a dream of mine in high school was to become a model, because I felt ugly. So of course, seeing all the beautiful women in the magazines, and I said, I want to be beautiful. Sorry.
It's okay, Amy. You are beautiful.
I would say I want to be beautiful like them because I never felt it. And that was my dream in high school, because I felt if I could do that, then I would be beautiful because I had never felt it. My family didn't really support that. And my boyfriend at the time did not support that. It was, why do you want to do that? Who are you trying to impress? When it was the self healing, the self love that I was looking for, it was for me. It was what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until like maybe 2 years ago that I had a revelation of, I never went after that on my own because I felt like if the people who should support me don't, then why should I? And so I was stuck in that. And I'm sorry, I'm getting so upset.
Don't worry.
So
Don't.
upset.
It's okay. When we are attacked and it's not justified, we usually have two options only. And one of the options is to fold in and surrender. The other option is to fight. And you had the urge to fight at that moment. You had the signal to prove everyone wrong. And usually when we went, like I'll give you an example in my situation. My mother was, and she still is, a fashionista, so she was like always the latest. And when I was growing up, there was a artist, Vanilla Ice. You remember Ice Ice Baby? And he
Yes,
had,
I remember a concert of his.
oh, you went to concert. He had a special hairstyle, and I did the same hairstyle with my mother's permission, and I had like the storms here, like the flash, and then little bricks on this side, and I dyed my hair. And I came home, and my dad says, there are no faggots that live in this house.
Mm,
And he had used that couple of different times to call me that. And I've never had any interest. I'm brave enough to come out if that's the case. I've done some self-awareness, but the shame he created in me stayed with me for a very long time. And during my teenage years and just growing up, I was really fighting this by proving to everyone on a much larger scale that in fact I'm not. And it led me to truth leads you to go really big. So the way I compare our situations, because I became a womanizer, I became a player, started to dating different girls, and you wanted to go all the way to the top to shut up everybody by becoming a model. And what are you going to say when you see me on the cover of Vogue, right? What are you going to say when you see me on the podium? And usually that's a sign of proving people wrong. It becomes an obsession that had led many great people, the rejection, the denial, the bullying, the all the negative things lead many great people to go way above and beyond to shut everybody up. But if you didn't feel the support, and then if you gave up on that, then you can't really fall in something in between. You got to go to a victim mindset. And if victim mindset overcomes that urge to fight back, then the struggle is way bigger. I can just think of so many different examples, like Barbara from Shark Tank. She was married. She was a waitress in New Jersey, and she was married to a realtor who was a client at the diner, and they became really powerful couple. I don't know if you know her story. And then he started falling in love with her assistant, and he married her assistant and kind of kicked her out of the business and told her, the only reason why you are successful is me. You will never be successful. You'll never make another dollar. So she made it a must to become the best realtor in New York and the best realtor in the country. And actually, she sends him until today. Every time when she gets paid, she sends him like an email with the money she gets paid to rub it in. And this drive becomes an unlimited source of energy, which I've experienced that, and I'm so grateful to God and to somewhat support that I've gotten. It wasn't from my family; it was probably from friends and somebody who had supported and given me hope to go and fight and prove them wrong. It's a good energy. It's not the best source of energy. It's because it's more obsessive versus being passionate and being supported and being loved and encouraged. But it does work. I know that Michael Jordan has the same story. I know that many of the greats, Elon Musk, his father was very mentally abusive, and he went all the way to the other side of the world. Drove, went from South Africa to Canada, and we all know who Elon Musk is today. And but it's obsessive disorder to prove the person you love the most wrong and fight for their love. So the foundation is orphan mindset, which leads to other issues down the road in life, because my orphan mindset led me to really transactional approach towards life. My biggest mission was to prove everybody wrong. And so it's not healthy, but it's better than being a victim mindset. It's the
Hmm.
better option of the worst option. So for you, this is, I just interviewed Jeremiah Evans, and his nickname is the Bull, and he was physically bullied at school and verbally and mentally challenged. And he had an opportunity when he went to his dad with his black eye, and they were doing some nasty things to him. His dad told him, leave my house, and you're not coming back here until you go and you mess up one of those kids, until you go and get revenge. And
Hmm.
he went to the main kid that was bullying him, and he knocked on his door and kind of sucker punched him, and got him back. And he describes the walk back home as the pivotal moment when he stopped being the victim, and
Hmm.
he felt relieved, and he felt weight over his shoulders, and just that was the moment of transformation. Did you get a chance for revenge, or did you get a chance to prove those people wrong, even though you didn't pursue your modeling career? By the way, it's never too late. Right now, it's a good time to start. We'll
Yeah.
support you. You have a good circle of support. If you decide to start modeling, I'm sure that you'll get success today. And did you have a chance to? You mentioned that you became the bully. Talk about that. Was that your transition? Hurt people, hurt people. When did you become the bully? How did that work out? Was that your form of revenge?
So I never took revenge on anyone from school because that was not in my nature to do. Because I had been on the receiving end and I knew what that felt like, and I never wanted to be the person doing that to anyone else. But when I say I became the bully, I became the bully to myself. I took over with a negative mindset. And if something that I wanted to do, that I was trying to do, didn't work out, I would tell myself, see, you never do anything right.
Okay.
You're never going to be able to do that. What were you thinking? So I picked up and carried on everything that others used to tell me. I picked up that mantle and I
Yeah.
bullied myself with the,
Self-sabotage.
yes, the negative self talk. And a lot of times it was worse than anything that the kids had ever told me.
Yeah. And you've mentioned the physical and mental abuse, and you also mentioned that one of your adversities was a loss of a loved one. At what age did you lose a loved one, and what did that feel like?
The first real loss that I experienced was losing my little brother when he was 12 years old. I was late 20s when I lost him. And of course, I had lost a few other family members along the way, but I wasn't, of course, as close to them as my little brother. And part of the reason why it affected me so much is because my stepdad, he worked offshore. So he was typically gone 2 weeks, home 2 weeks. And when he was at work, my mom typically was gone working. She would bartend at the bars, or she would go just to get away from the house and be there. So when we got off of the bus, it would just be me and my two brothers. So, there are times when, I would have to cook us dinner, I would have to help them with their homework, or just kind of step up and be the mom to them when our mom was gone. And so it felt like, of course, that I helped raise both of my brothers. And of course, his age, him being so young. And I know, even people younger than 12 pass away all the time. But for me, it just really didn't make any sense. And I was a believer, but I had never fully accepted Christ. I grew up, my grandmother, she would take me to church, and she is really the reason for my faith. So, I knew about God. I knew that He would answer prayers and that He could heal people. And, but the day that my brother was in his accident, I was actually in Jackson for class. And, I remember getting that call. And after I'd finished taking a test, I walked outside and called the number back. And it was the hospital in our town. And there were only two people that came to mind, and it was my grandmother and it was my little brother. And my uncle's girlfriend got on the phone and she said, "Amy, I'm sorry, but there's been a really bad accident and Clay was involved and he has been life flighted to Jackson, to the University Hospital." And I just kind of lost it there. And um, one of my classmates, he drove me to the hospital, and I went in, and he was in the ER, and they allowed me to go in. I was one of the first family members there. And so sorry,
It's okay.
I remember walking in and seeing him laying there on the hospital bed, and his body just kind of broken and bruised. And I was holding his hand and just in a complete state of shock. And I never said anything to him. I never told him how much I loved him. And that was the last time that I feel like he would have heard me talk to him, because he ended up passing away. And I carried so much guilt and just so much shame, and just hated myself for the longest time, because I didn't say anything to him. And of course, just feeling, had not been a really good sister to him. I was a mean sister. I didn't take him, enough places with me or do enough for him. But the biggest was never saying anything when he was in the ER. And that really did haunt me for a long time. But I was also very angry with God,
Hmm.
because I felt like he didn't answer our prayers. And I didn't understand it. I'm like, "God, your word says you answer prayers, you bring healing, you are a great physician, and you didn't do it." And just kind of hating on God because he didn't live up to what we hear and what we know about him. And it just led to a very dark time, and filled with depression. And again, just a lot of that negative mindset that I had had for so long just intensified because of the grief, and not having the tools to deal with grief, and my family not having the tools to deal with grief. And everybody is hurting at their own pace. They're handling it in their own way, of course, filled with a lot of anger, um, bitterness, resentment, uh, just all the things that grief brings to a person. And the suicidal thoughts started, just being caught up in all of that. And and God is always a faithful God, and He's a loving God, and He knew what I was going through, what I was experiencing, what I was thinking, and He brought my brother to me in a dream.
Mm.
And it was so real. And I remember seeing him and just running to him and just giving him the biggest hug. And I didn't want to let go. And I kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you. I love you. I need you to know how much I love you. And I'm sorry for being, a mean sister if I was mean. And I remember hearing him say, I know you loved me, and it's okay. You were not a mean sister. And we just stayed there in that moment, and it seemed like forever. And then I remember him saying, I've got to go. And it was like losing him all over again.
Mm.
But it was better because when I woke up the next morning, like the amount of darkness that I had been in was not there anymore. The amount of guilt and shame that I had felt was not there anymore, because at least God had allowed me to have that moment to know that He knew that I
Yeah.
loved Him when I didn't feel that He did. But a lot of that was just my own negative thoughts and being caught up in that bully mindset back then, in the depression and the darkness. And I wish I could say that everything was, bright and sunshiny after that. It wasn't, because I was still dealing with the grief and his loss, but it just wasn't the same as it was before
Yeah.
then. And it did help me to grow from that, but I still had that question to God, why? And that was the biggest question that I continued to ask. But the weekend after his funeral, me and my other brother, we fully accepted Christ, and we were baptized the next weekend because we said we want to ensure that we get to see him again.
Mm.
And that that why continued for years. And I think God kind of finally got tired of me asking, why did you take him? Because he was so young, he still had his whole life ahead of him. And God always works in weird ways sometimes. And I remember driving home one day, and just out of the blue, he told me the reason why he had to take him was to save others. And at first it kind of caught me off guard because it was just out of the blue. I had kind of stopped asking because I hadn't, received the answer. But after that day, I got to thinking, I was like, had he not passed away, I can't say for sure that me or my brother would have ever fully accepted Christ and been baptized. And I also think that my stepdad came into a better relationship with God after Clay passed away, because I would see him, reading the Bible, or the Bible being on the coffee table, when that wasn't really something that we used to see from him, with the Bible, or reading, or knowing that he read it, or him really going to church on his own without anyone else. And so that helped me to to see that even in tragedy, God is still God. He can use that tragedy for good. it's not easy to see or understand that when you're going through those hard situations. And in this instance, it was years later before I really started to see positives in the negative, or see positives in hurts or in trials or difficult situations, because he had finally given me that why that I had asked for so long. And so I would say he gave me the answer, but he also helped to plant the seed within my spirit to begin to grow from it. And today, when the things are hard, it is taking the conscious step to be like, okay, this is how something is right now, but I know how God worked through this situation, so I will have hope in what I'm dealing with now, that God will work it out, and something positive, something joyful, something good, or something better, or there will be something to come from this situation that will help not to hurt, or it will lead you to a different path. It will bring you to a different place of healing and growth. Whereas if we didn't take the time to look for the positives in it, we may miss the opportunity to grow, whether it be mindset, uh, body, spiritually, and then even in your faith. And it kind of goes to a quote: we can either become the victim or the victor. And for me, I choose to become the victor instead of being the victim through everything that I've gone through. But it also helps you to be able to come alongside others who are dealing with things that you've gone through in life, and to help share your experience, but also to love on other people who may not feel loved, or who may not feel supported, or who may not feel encouraged. So those are some of the biggest pieces from
Mm.
that loss that I've been able to come to understand and know.
It seems like you've moved into a very mature perspective now, and this is happening in your mid 20s. And I know that you've mentioned that you've been kind of stuck for almost 40 years, right, in this victim mindset, and you've accepted Jesus as your savior and your Lord at early age, but you still had battles with why and how come. And when did it click for you? When did you change your perspective? Because I think that obviously we're very sad, and I've been so fortunate. I haven't lost, I have lost grandparents, but I haven't lost a sibling or parent. I've lost some really good friends, and we don't have control when we're going to go. And it seems to me when people, obviously it's sad, it's the toughest thing to swallow when you lose a loved one. There's nothing more painful as far as emotion and experience in life than losing a loved one. I don't think there's anything more painful. But instead of asking why did this person die, why are we still alive? Because we're in the process of dying, and we could live until the day we die. But for some reason, we think that we're safe and we could live millions of years when we ask those questions, and when we guilt trip God, like, why are you taking this? If we start asking the question, why am I still alive? You know, all these people are dying, all these people are struggling with different life-threatening situation. Why am I healthy today? Like, what is, much easier to see this life as temporary life and believe in eternal life and prepare a character for eternity, and see it as the approach as like a video game. It's easy to die in a video game, but here you are, you're still alive. You can go for round two, you can try again. So believing in eternity, was that the click for you, just understanding how God works and diving deeper into being more faithful? When did the click happen for you, so you received peace and you started to manage your self-sabotage and you turned your energy towards giving courage to others and healing others? Can you share a little bit about the transformation? When did it click for you?
So after I received that why, things did start to click more. You know, we've gone on to lose nearly everyone in my immediate family since my brother. And so every loss helped to know, like what you stated, that we're never promised tomorrow. I think when God gave me that why, it did start me more on more on the journey to maybe learning God and why certain things may happen the way that they do, making the conscious choice to do that and walk from that place of victor instead of victim, and being able to share those experiences with others, I think came more from stepping into that place of self-awareness
Mm,
and just discovering more of seeing how God worked and finding finding a faith-based therapist
mhm,
to help process a lot of things. And I remember him walking me through an exercise, and it kind of went to something that you stated earlier about, God doesn't give us beat downs. He addresses us in certain ways, and it can feel like a beat down when it's really not. He's just redirecting us. But I remember that day, and he had me kind of go through and mentally picture, me and like another version of me, or two sisters, and God being a father, and God seeing one sister being mean to the other, saying mean and negative things about her, and made me question, well, how do you think that made God feel? Because we are made in God's image.
mhm.
And if we're made in God's image, then we are all beautiful and uniquely and beautifully designed. And it really made me think of, God would never tell me I'm ugly. God would never tell me I didn't think, or I'm stupid because I didn't get something right. He would never talk to us the way that we talk to ourselves. So, how do you think that makes him feel when we do it?
Right.
If we are made in his image. And after that moment, it did help me start to see just how bad negative self-talk can be,
Yeah.
and how powerful. I think the biggest thing was how powerful our words are,
Yeah.
because there is either life or death in the tongue. And we hear, it's a two-edged sword, and our words have power. We can either bless or we can curse, and God would prefer us to bless rather than curse, because we are made in his image. And I think it's again just being mindful of that when negative doubts come, when people treat us wrong, or even if we have a lapse and we do something wrong. But for me personally, It's realizing everything that I've gone through, and knowing how it felt to feel alone, knowing how it felt to feel like you were an outcast, how it felt to, to be the ugly duckling and never feeling very loved or supported. And so that's when it kind of became a, I don't want others to feel that way or to think that way. And so I will show them love. I will, help encourage them. I will support them. I will offer prayers and walk alongside them with whatever that they are going through, because that's what we should do, because that's what God does for us. And if we are made in his image, then we should do the same thing.
Yeah, I love that you've changed your perspective, and obviously you're giving full credit to God and your walk with God. What are some practical tips that you could give our audience? I know that you have a very creative way of bringing people in a state of serenity and state of peace, and through art, which is so beautiful. And what are some of the practical exercises, some of the things that helped you in your transformation and transition from a victim to victor, and how dangerous victim mindset really is, and what do you want to share with the people who are still in that place of self-sabotage and blaming God and everybody else, and really complaining about what happened to them, and finding excuses for not becoming the victor, because it's really a place where we get stuck, and when people are stuck, they need a branch, they need someone to give them a hand, and sometimes they're the only ones that have the key to the cage they've locked themselves in. So how do you make the transition? Because some people are like, all right, I'm in this situation right now, I beat myself up because my parents or my spouse or my best friends did it for many years, and I destroy myself. How do I become the victor? What are some practical things, if those people don't have God yet, what are some practical things they could do that are logical and would get them away from that state of victim? What do you suggest?
I would say one of the most important important things that I've learned along my journey is that it goes to the tools that that person was given. It's understanding that the way they were treated may not have had anything to do with them or what they did, but had everything to do with the other person. It's knowing that people it's a learned behavior, so to speak. So like use my stepdad, because I think that's one of the biggest areas that I've come to understand, is that he did what he knew to do, right or wrong. That's what he knew. He didn't know any better, and it goes to that phrase that we hear: we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
And to step from victim to victor is realizing that it's for me to understand along the way that kids in school tend to reenact or carry themselves or do what they see at home. Maybe they are bullied at home, so they go to school and they become the bully because that's what they know. They talk to other people negatively because that's what they know, that's what they saw. And people may have heard that nobody is coming to save you, nobody can change you but yourself. And again, it goes to taking the conscious choice of, and maybe to rephrase that better to something else that I know people hear a lot: being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And for me, I believe my true journey to a deeper, more mature self awareness came when in 2021 I went through another season of rejection and feeling that I was never going to be able to get where I wanted to be, and being sick and tired of falling into the hamster wheel of the negative self-talk, the
Yeah.
bullying, starting to journal my thoughts, which were to help me accept myself and finally love myself. And that journey produced my first book. And it's taken the conscious effort to know where you're at, know where you want to be, and getting tired of being stuck in that old state and pulling yourself out, whether that's reaching out to, someone that you trust, someone that you love, getting the help of a professional. My therapist was very instrumental for me to see certain things and the reasons why I did certain things, the reasons why maybe I was triggered in a certain way. But a lot of it was taken taking enough initiative to do for myself what I never felt possible before. And that was to love myself, to finally see and believe what people said about me was true, because I never said it to myself. People would say, "You're beautiful, you're smart, you do all these things so well," but never believing it, but taking the initiative to step into that and fully believe that helped so much, so much.
Yeah. And you've mentioned a little bit about your stepdad. What part do you think forgiveness plays in this whole process? Because even when Jesus was on the cross and Pilatus gave him a chance to pick between him or Barabbas, which was clearly a murderer and a criminal, and it didn't make sense logically for them to pick Jesus. Just like it doesn't make sense for his stepfather to be an abuser. It doesn't make logical sense. He's supposed to be replacing and be a better version of a father. He's got a completely different role. So to the observer, this is illogical. This is out of line. But in Luke 23:34, Jesus says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." So it's like what you've mentioned about your stepdad. And what part, because a lot of times when we go through turmoil and hardship, we think that the solution is going to be easy. The solution is
Mm,
actually harder. We have to, the hardship is preparing us for grace, which is the hardest thing, to
mhm.
forgive someone who doesn't deserve it, someone who clearly does not deserve it, and heal them and heal ourselves through this forgiveness. So would you say forgiveness played a big part in your healing and your transformation from being a victim, from a victim to a victor? Obviously, you mentioned we're made in God's image, and you finally believed those positive words about yourself. Loving yourself is the hardest thing, especially after you've been your biggest enemy for so many years, abusing yourself. What part forgiveness play? And do you have to forgive yourself as well for being so abusive so many years to yourself before you become that ray of light and a victor? Was the process of
Absolutely.
forgiving was the process of forgiving a part of your transformation at all?
It was. And when I moved out of my home in when I was 18, it was not a very pleasant leaving. Me and my stepdad actually did get into a physical altercation when I left, and so we did not speak for months. But the funny thing, when we are teenagers or young adults, we think that we know everything. And it took getting out on my own to start to realize, hey, he really did know what he was talking about for some things about life. And so we actually developed a really good relationship
Mm,
after months of moving out. And there were many times when I would talk to him more than I talked to my mom when I would
wow.
call. But the biggest thing, forgiveness is not for the other person, because chances are people may not even realize that they've hurt us and they've moved on, they're going about their life. But if you're still caught up and resenting them for certain things that they did, then what you in essence do, you allow bitterness, you allow anger, you allow hatred, any negative word that you want to come up with, that's what you harbor in your heart when you do not forgive. So the forgiveness piece is not necessarily always for someone else. It is more for yourself to be able to heal and move past all of the hurt and things that happened. That way, you allow your heart to be filled with love and light and goodness, kindness, all the good things that a person should be, compassionate and empathetic. That's what you allow your heart to be filled with when you forgive, whether it's someone else or it's for self forgiveness.
Yeah. Which one is harder, to forgive the person you have the most resentment towards, or to forgive yourself?
I would probably have to say self.
Yeah, because you're always there, and you're
Right.
way worse than your worst abuser. It
That's
doesn't
right.
stop. So, what are some practical things? And by the way, if you could be so kind, please post in the comments links to your first book and to all the resources where people can get a hold of you and they could have a private conversation with you. What are some of the things that you're doing as far as self therapy? I know that you've mentioned something about art. Can you please talk to us a little bit more about that, and share with us some of the positive transformation you've experienced since healing, and some of the testimonies that you've seen with yourself and with others? Would you be so kind?
Sure. So a lot of, I would say again, the deepest part of my healing journey started in 2020. It was the first time that I invested in a coach, and he is also my therapist. And that was the start. Of course, 2020 was also the year of COVID lockdowns. I was in a new position at work for accounting, and it was very stressful given I'm not an accountant or a CPA. And when we were sent home, that was very new for me, and just the stress of everything with work, everything, of course, that was going on in the world with COVID, not knowing anything, and the stress and anxiety of everything started weighing on me. And after work, started to numb out everything with alcohol. And there were nights when I would finish a whole bottle of wine by myself. And I had always told myself that I would never follow in the footsteps of becoming an alcoholic like my parents, just because of everything that I saw growing up, and of course experiencing growing up. That was never a path that I wanted to follow down. And I remember one night I was at home and I just came across a YouTube channel for fluid art, and it caught my attention because it was very abstract. It was new. I had never seen it before, and I was just so mesmerized, and I ended up probably watching an hour or more of just different videos of this artwork and this technique. And of course that bloomed and went from there. And so I had a little bit of paint from different things, and I said, let me try this out and see, how this process works. And I remember sitting down and doing some and remembering saying, oh wow, seems a lot harder than it looks on the video. And that became my outlet, because when I would pick up the paint or go into my spare bedroom to paint, everything that I had felt or experienced during the day, all of the head trash, as I call it, just the negativity and the stress and the worry and the anxiety, all of that went away when I
Mm.
got to the desk to create something. And it started out just as, something for me to do instead of picking up a bottle at night after work. And because I knew I wasn't alone in stress of what was going on, I started to do Facebook Live videos where I would just share, my workspace and what I was creating, just to help other people take their focus off of what was going on, to fill their news feed with something different and something positive, instead of, paying attention to the news or paying attention to the negativity. And what I found was it was also very therapeutic
Mm.
in a mental sense, because it's like if you walk into a restaurant and it's very noisy, but maybe you step, into the bathroom and it's quiet, or you step outside and it's quiet. That is basically how it felt when I would get into create. It's like all the voices and just everything that had happened that day. It was like the mute button had been turned on.
It's like you're in the
And
zone.
yes, it's all of the focus. My thoughts were strictly on what I was doing.
Mm.
And it led down, that path of becoming my outlet, um, you know, my addiction per se, instead of alcohol.
Passion?
uh,
Passion?
yes, passion. It did become an addiction because I created so much, but it wasn't until, someone said, hey, is this for sale, that it kind of made me think, wow, this is really good. People are connecting with what I've created to a point where, they want to purchase that. But the biggest I think the biggest thing that has come from my journey to accepting myself as an artist is just the benefits of creating, and realizing the benefits of creating, and being able to pour out day's emotions or every negative thing out onto a canvas by way of paint, and creating this magical piece of work that embodies things that you are connected to, or things that come out of what you create, that help someone to discover a way of meditating visually, or being able to connect through messaging for becoming more spiritual, or being able to connect with spirit. And it's being able to to really expand your mind. And I think that is something that I have noticed the most since embracing that creativity, is how much more I can look at something and realize a different way of doing something. It lends to better creative thinking, better brainstorming. The visualization meditation is when you step away from whatever you're doing and you just look at a piece of artwork and you allow your mind to search what you're looking at. You can it you can open up your mind. You also get a raise of serotonin when you look at a piece of artwork. And of course, that's the feel good hormone, the happy hormone. And it's also basically the same as looking at a loved one. The benefits of art just span so many different things, but it's very healing and therapeutic to do. And I love being able to create a piece of artwork and someone just connect with it on some deep down level that bring them healing in maybe whatever it is that they just somehow they connect it with that piece in a certain way. And I just really find that so amazing and just thankful that God gave that talent and gifting to me.
Yeah, it seems like very interesting. I almost want to try it. I definitely do. I have my own in the zone therapy, and I think it's so critical for people to find that place where they could be solely focused on something they truly enjoy for a longer period of time, 1 or 2 hours. Because sometimes the abuse is all day long, the negative self talk and self sabotage. Are there any practical tips that you could share to stop the negative self talk? Do you catch it early? Do you have some type of process that you follow if it happens again, or do you fight it by being proactively positive? Do you have like a ritual or a routine that you follow to protect yourself from yourself? And do you have some sort of boundaries to protect yourself from being bullied again? Or can you share with us some practical tips on how do you enforce that positivity when you're not in that state of serenity and peace during the day?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can be positive, you can change all you want, but that doesn't mean that, those thoughts do not ever pop in your mind, but it's being aware when they do pop in your mind to reframe it. And if something says, "Oh, well, you'll never be able to do that," you could quickly reframe and say, "You know what? I published a book. It became a bestseller on Amazon," or, I wrote a second book, or, someone else could say, while I may not feel like I do very, very well, "Oh, look, I just got a promotion at work from, everything that I've done, all of the steps that I've done to step up as a leader." You can learn to reframe when the negative thoughts come. Quickly look at things that you have accomplished. It's being mindful of the things you've accomplished. It's being grateful. Within our circle, gratitude is a big thing. And so just reminding yourself of, a couple things every day that you are grateful for in your life, whether it be, a physical thing or a spiritual aspect, people, things that have happened that you're grateful for receiving. And again, when the negativity comes, it's remembering all of that so you can reframe of saying, "Hey, I am smart. I went to school and this is what I accomplished. And now I'm a very successful businessman," or, "I went to school. I didn't think I was going to be able to become a nurse. And now look at me, I'm an RN or I'm a nurse practitioner." It could be teacher. I am helping to instill in young children a good, solid education, or I am training my child up in the way that they should go. I am being the spiritual leader of my household. That way, my family can be covered in that spiritual protection. I pray for other people when they need prayer. all of these things can help redirect when the negativity comes. And sometimes, it may take, a couple minutes. You may just have a really bad off day. But again, it's just making the conscious choice to choose your words and to choose your thoughts differently, and knowing that some days it's okay not to be okay. I told a friend of mine recently that not every day is going to start or end with fireworks, because, I mean, let's just face it, not every day is, filled with rainbows, but it's knowing that we can make a rainbow if we want to. We can choose positivity instead of negativity, but it's that conscious mindset to do so.
Those are very, very, very helpful. So, from what I'm getting at, is you are challenging the lies with facts. So, would
Mhm.
you recommend for us to maybe have a book, like a gratitude book, where we write down all those facts, all those wins, all those things that are substantial, and challenge the lies with those things when we run into imposter syndrome or self sabotage? So,
Yes, yes, definitely. And not to cut you off, but I just feel so empowered by that, because
yeah.
that was part of the journey along the way that really helped me to believe in myself, because I never gave myself credit for the things that I did, because I didn't feel I was worthy of doing good things. But it was once I started the gratitudes and being grateful, you attract more things to be grateful for. And when you keep track of your wins in a book, or, on a sticky note in your phone, or, whatever method that you want to keep track of that, on those negative days, you could go back to that and be like, oh, this is what I accomplished. Oh, I remember, accomplishing that. Oh, it really does take away from that negative thought that I had today or yesterday, because I have accomplished these
Yeah.
things, and it really does help you to overcome.
Can you share with us? This is going to be one of those deep questions, so sit down. If you have the opportunity right now to go back to a certain moment in your life, and you have the ability to edit what happens in that moment, whether you edit your actions or somebody else's actions, or you could choose not to edit anything but just to relive that moment again. Is there a moment, good or bad, in your past that you would like to go and edit or relive, just to be an observer again with today's version of you?
Oh gosh, Velco. There are so many days that I have sat and thought about things that I would like to go back and change, things to go back and experience again.
Which one is the most
But,
significant?
well, here's the thing. Everything that we go through make us who we are today. And I think that while I would love to go back and change certain things, part of me wonders who I would be today. Would I have found the healing? Would I have stepped into the self awareness that I have today, if any certain pieces or parts were changed? But if I had to choose one thing, it would probably be when my brother was in the ER, just to tell him that I loved him. Not necessarily that it would have made anything different then, but just to verbally speak it out, whether he would have heard it or not.
He did in the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
And we are spiritual beings having this human experience. If you believe
Hmm.
that, then believe that he definitely knows that you loved him and you still love him. And I really appreciate everything that you shared with us. It's been such a difficult journey. I feel nothing but admirations and kudos for what you've gone through and surviving and now transforming your life and transforming others' life. And I know that you'll be instrumental in millions and millions of people's lives if you continue your journey of self-healing and healing others through is such a unique way of therapy. In closing, what are some positive things? What is some good hope that you would want to give people who are watching right now and they are in a terrible place of victimhood and terrible place of self-sabotage and depression and guilt and shame? What are some words of hope that you could give them?
Words of hope would be to hang on, to find someone that you love and trust and share with them what you've gone through. And it may be difficult. And if you are in a place where you do not feel like you can talk to someone else, take a notebook and start journaling everything. Just get everything out that you feel deep down inside, just to get that weight off of your shoulders. If you do have someone that you feel comfortable in sharing, share your message, share whatever it is that you feel you need to get off of your heart and get out, because that in itself can start a healing journey. And it's not going to be pleasant. Again, it's not going to be an instant shift, but when you start to share your story, you will find hope and encouragement because you are being brave and courageous to share what you've gone through. But when you share your story, you encourage someone else to share their story.
Yes.
And it's a ripple effect because your mess becomes your message, your test becomes your testimony. And when you share all of that, again, you are helping to encourage someone else that they are not alone, that there are others who have gone through or felt the same things. The journeys may look different, but at the core, it is all hurt at the
Yeah.
core of what we go through. But when we allow others to come alongside of us, it just helps to build ourselves up. It encourages us and strengthens us to continue to share our messages and find strength in sharing the message. It brings hope to our hearts because we were able to share that. But I think it also allows an opportunity for God to come alongside of us and strengthen us and walk with us and provide comfort from that pain and to build our faith more and start a true healing journey.
Yes. Emmy, we felt the pain, at least I did, and I'm sure that some of the viewers did, and we are so fortunate to be in your presence as a victor, as somebody on the other side of this. And we know that the healing is difficult, but we're so thankful and we appreciate so much that you're putting yourself out there to share your story, to put light on all of the abuse that you went through. And we just want to thank you so much for your time and for being brave to come out and heal others by sharing your message. And we'd love to get to know you more. Please share with us, where can people find you? Obviously, you're a member of this group and you could be easily found here. I know that you want to help us with providing some content on this topic and just on self-love and healing from self-sabotage and imposter syndrome and negative self-talk. So we're looking forward to seeing your posts. But how can people connect with you personally and follow you on a personal level?
They can find me on Facebook and Instagram by Amy Hesper. I'm on LinkedIn as well. If anybody wants to connect, they can follow me there. Or if they want to have a personal connection or a personal conversation, they are welcome to send me a DM. I will be more than happy to help anyone in any shape or form that I can.
We love you so much, and you're beautiful. And we're looking forward to see you modeling soon. So don't give up on that dream yet. It's not over yet. We're looking to see
Yeah.
some professional shots soon, and we'll support you in that direction as well. And we're very interested in seeing your art. You've mentioned that you have created a ton of art. Where can we see a gallery of all the things you're talking about?
I do have a website. It's reflectionsbyhesper.com. I do have things there. I've shared, of course, artwork on my Instagram page and then my personal Facebook page. I tend to share a lot of my work as well.
Reflections by Hesper.com.
Hmm.
Does it look like this?
Yes.
Good. So go to the website to check out Amy's art. And Amy, thank you so much for sharing your story. Is there anything that we didn't cover, anything that you would like to share with our viewers as our last words today?
Um, well, we went pretty deep today. Was not really expecting to go quite that deep, but to go back to the modeling, I did do some amateur modeling for local
Woo-hoo!
photographers.
We want to see some pictures.
Um, yes. So I did do that and got to experience that dream. While it wasn't like on a national level, it was a step in that direction to make me feel like I had fulfilled that dream.
Praise the Lord. I know there's gonna be more and more moments of greatness that we're gonna see in the future. So thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank
Thank
you for having me, Vilko. It was a pleasure.